Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by the Gallery Bar, Book, and Games in Ocean Casino Resort. For the football season, cheers your favorite drinks while cheering on your favorite team. Go to the Gallery in Ocean Casino Resort and go for the win. For more information, visit oceanac.com. You must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Mike Hill, Ryan Rothstein sitting in for Pete Thompson. Geoff Mosher's here from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped this morning with their 53-man picks. And I guess we'll start with that, Geoff Mosher, because the Eagles have already started to make some moves. And one of them was Jaquiski Tartt. Adam Kaplan reported that a little while ago, that he has been informed that he will not make the team. So let's start with that. Are you surprised that Tartt is out, and what does that mean for that position in your mind?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all, Mike. I know he came here with some high expectations, even though he was signed late. But you watch training camp, he was clearly with the third team the entire time. He missed, I think, at least a week's worth of time. He had to leave for personal reasons. He had already been trying to adapt and acclimate into a new defense, and it hadn't been going as well as the team hoped. And, at his age, what he's been through, I don't think the Eagles felt at this stage of the game, if he wasn't already going to come in and contribute immediately, then it made much sense to have him on the roster. And I think that was becoming pretty clear in the days leading up, and then in the preseason game. I didn't even have him making the team on my 53-man roster that came out today, neither did Adam. So looked like the writing was on the wall there. Just didn't materialize the way you had hoped some of their other June signings had been able to materialize for them. And it's unfortunate because it was at a position they needed it to really help. Yeah,
I was going to say, was he that bad that he could not beat out any of these guys? Or did somebody, in other words, did somebody make the team? Did somebody play so well that they just felt more comfortable because of the way and what that guy did in camp?
Well, I think that it's a combination of him not really, playing at a level that they felt was good. You could say a guy like Reed Blankenship, who may wind up making the 53 here. I had him on mine, and we'll see. And so did Adam. We'll see what happens. I'm not certain that they're thinking we're going to keep Reed Blankenship and play him in the spot that we had originally intended for Jaquiski Tartt to play. I think that they're just trying to keep young guys who have upside. And then for currently, what they're going to do now is maybe not be able to play as many 3 safety packages, or you saw that Josiah Scott was seeing a lot of safety by the time the camp reaches midway point. So he's a cover guy. And from what we understand, what they want to do on the back end, a whole lot of mirror and match coverage, pattern match coverage. You want versatile guys who can cover, and really, Jaquiski Tartt was known for being a hitter. And even in the game he played well in, where he had the sideline hit and the fourth down stop. That's, great for being a downhill guy, but they needed more coverage ability. And so it looks like if they are going to play 3 safety looks, Josiah Scott would be that third safety anyway.
Moshe, it's Ryan here. Good to talk to you as always, brother.
Hi, what's going on, bro?
Yeah, man. So let's talk about this secondary and really the defense as a whole. You say that, defensively they're going to show some 3-man looks from the safety perspective there. What's the identity of this defense? And it ties into the secondary conversation because I've been getting asked that a lot. Like, is it a 4-3, 3-4, a little bit of both? Last year, we know Gannon didn't have a lot of tools in the old toolbox. So what can we expect?
Yeah, great question, Ryan. The identity to me is yet to be forged, and I'm not trying to cop out, but I think we have a lot to learn because they're doing some new things. And I would say the initial identity is what it kind of usually is with the Eagles, and that's defensive line strength and defensive line depth. They've got a really good array of pass rushers from Hassan Reddick to Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Teron Jackson had a nice camp as well. Patrick Johnson came on. So that's an area where they're strong always, and they will probably continue to be as long as, they don't see too much declining from some guys and as long as they stay healthy. But we saw last year, I don't think the D-line was bad last year, even though it didn't have that many sacks. I feel like quarterbacks, and this is what the tape showed you, quarterbacks knew exactly what they wanted to do as soon as the ball was snapped. And that's going to kill a defensive line because it gives them no time to get to the quarterback. And the reason why quarterbacks are able to do that was because the back end was not very talented and the scheme was very vanilla, so it was pretty easy to read. What they've done in the offseason, with their upgrades at linebacker and then what they're now trying to do in the secondary is cause a little more guesswork for the quarterbacks. Will it work? That's up to Jonathan Gannon and what he does with the personnel. I can't say I'm not going to sit here and say it's definitely going to work. I've got to see it happen first, and I know that people around the league who I've spoken to have some questions about, him being a gun-shy defensive coordinator or him being the right guy to call up to cook up the schemes that are going to work. So we'll see if that becomes the identity, if this becomes a confusing Eagles defense for quarterbacks.
A lot of new faces on the defensive side of the ball, Mosher, and two names that are brand new as well as into the NFL. Nakobe Dean, of course, and Jordan Davis, two guys with a ton of talent in their bones, if you will. Which guy are you, I guess I could say, more excited to see / who will have a bigger impact this year for the Birds?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, the temptation right now is to think that Jordan Davis is going to have a bigger impact, but in all fairness,
doesn't he need to?
It depends, though. I mean, I think that right now he's a first and second down player. He's not a pass rusher, and not that first and second down isn't important. It is. If you stop the run and you get teams in second and third and long, well, then that helps you do what you want to do on the back end and create that guesswork that I just talked about. But it's not like Jordan Davis is going to be on the field the whole game. And I think we still have to learn with a guy that size is, can he be effective as the game goes on in the second, third, fourth quarter as he is in the first? Does he have the endurance to carry a 340-pound body and play as much football or as good as football in the fourth quarter as he does in the first? We know he came out a lot when he was at Georgia. And then Nakobe Dean, through no fault of his own, I got to give all the credit in the world to T.J. Edwards, man, because this cat played awesome this preseason. He had a great camp. He had a great preseason. He didn't play the last few games, so he's clearly a starter. Everybody, myself included, thought that when they got Kazir White and then drafted Nakobe Dean, that T.J. was going to wind up just being like kind of that base, downhill linebacker when they have three linebackers out there. But he's been their best linebacker, so he's going to be on the field. So we'll have to see how Nakobe Dean kind of enters the equation. But I guess that's a good thing for the Eagles if they can say that, their first-round pick and then their kind of anticipated or celebrated third-round pick aren't necessarily going to be starters right away because guys ahead of them are either better or more talented at the moment.
Now, I only bring up, don't they need Davis to be more impactful because aren't they, maybe Gannon won't say this and maybe I'm wrong, but aren't they hoping that his presence on the field will open things up for T.J. Edwards and Kazir White and Hassan Reddick and make those guys more impactful?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly, if you remember last year, they had a real big issue in run defense, especially at the start of the year. They were awful in run defense. And Jonathan Gannon wants to play his safeties a little bit away from the line of scrimmage. He wants to keep everything in front. That's a big philosophy. But in order to do that, when you're going to play those light boxes, keep the safety out, you got to stop the run. And they couldn't. So that's where Jordan Davis's impact is supposed to be felt most. He's supposed to be able to come in there with this new multiple front defense and, take up two blockers and help those running backs get downhill into the gaps, tackle the running backs and keep it to a minimal gain or a loss. And that's where and that's supposed to help the whole entire defense because, like I mentioned, then you've got your opposing offense and quarterbacks facing second and long and being behind the sticks a lot. That's the vision right now that you have.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. Jason Huntley did not make the team. I don't know if that's a surprise. He did have a good game. I thought 11 for 90. Had that 6-yard touchdown run. I mean, he showed a little bit more, but we know what he is. Do they stick with just the three guys? Are they going to be on the lookout when cuts are made tomorrow?
I think they're going to stick with three guys on the initial 53. because I don't think they need anything else other than Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell. They could use a big back, the guy who played the Jordan Howard role last year. But remember, Jordan Howard started on the practice squad, then was getting elevated. They could do that similarly if they feel like there's a veteran out there. The other part of that is, Jalen Reagor is on the trade block, of course. I mean, if a team wants to trade with the Eagles and they want to acquire Reagor and they're having difficulty kind of finding the right match, maybe it's a pick and a player, well, perhaps that player is kind of one of those bigger running backs that teams aren't usually afraid to give up.
Moshe, I guess we do have to ask your opinion on the game Saturday. I mean, do you look at that and say, don't care, it's concerning, don't like the mentality? I mean, all these teams do it differently. We saw Tom Brady play. We saw Fields play. We saw Tua play. We saw Miami play their starters. Last year, the Rams didn't play at all, and they won the Super Bowl. So does it not matter that this is the Eagles' philosophy, or would you like to see them play more guys?
That didn't bother me. I don't think that's as much of an issue, and I don't think there's any long-term conclusions to be drawn from getting, your ass kicked in Miami. But there are a couple things that stick out to me. One is that you did have backups there for the Eagles trying to fight for jobs, and it didn't look that way. I think even a couple of them admitted after the game. Like a guy like Kevon Wallace, who I don't know if he's going to make it, did not play particularly well. And you would have thought he would have said, all right, this is my shot. The Miami starters are out there. I got to do everything I can do. And he just didn't. And I felt like the entire team, a lot of guys played sort of lethargically. So it made me think, and this is all speculative, but it's probably good conversation for you guys. I wonder in retrospect if Nick Sirianni would have followed the same schedule, because if you think about it, they were on the road last week, the prior week in Cleveland, 2 practices a game, came home for a short time, back on the road in Miami, 2 joint practices, well, what should have been 2 joint practices, but still practicing in Miami, preseason game. Come back home here, all right? You're home for a little bit, then you're going to be starting the season on the road. Those joint practices are pretty intense. They're very intense, and there's a lot that goes on. And I just wonder, just being down in Miami, watching the practice, Adam and I were there, and then seeing the game, if they just have no legs at this point. Because those joint practices take a lot, traveling takes a lot, and they were on the road basically for 2 straight weeks. And now they're home, but they're going to be practicing for a road game. Just knowing all of that in retrospect, I wonder if Nick would have done anything differently there, kind of having a better sense of how tired his team might be. That's why he probably rested his starters. But just in general, I think that takes a lot out of you.
Moshe, I asked you a few minutes ago about the identity and the defense. I want your thoughts on the offense and more specifically, not just what their identity is going to be, but how much more creativity can we expect to see, in your opinion, from Nick Sirianni? And I asked that with just Devontae Smith on my mind, because we're all excited for A.J. Brown. We all assume that A.J. Brown's just presence is going to open things up for Devontae. But how will all of that sort of coincide with hopefully a new and improved offense?
Yeah, so creativity is something I'm wondering about, because I don't feel that Nick Sirianni's pedigree, and I would probably say the same with Shane Steichen when coming from the Chargers, was creativity in what you see now with like Shanahan-style offenses or McVay-style offenses, motion, misdirection, route kind of innovation. I think Nick Sirianni basically, runs a traditional sort of West Coast offense that he probably learned a lot from under Frank Reich and Todd Haley and other guys before that, also when he was out in L.A. So, I don't know that it's the most creative offense. I expect this year's offense to be more RPO-driven. It started that way last year, but I don't think clearly Jalen Hurts and the offense is not ready for that. So I do think you'll see some good RPO games. You always see some good run schemes drawn up by Jeff Stoutland and the coaches. But I think it's got to be an execute offense, Ryan. I mean, it's got to be, they've got guys who can attack every level. They have an A.J. Brown who can turn a short pass into a long gain, as well as at the second and third level. I think Devontae Smith is a guy who flourishes in the second level, and then occasionally the third. And then they'll have Quez Watkins, who can get vertical, and then Zach Pascal, who's more of a short pass guy. And then, of course, their running game that they will try to balance off their passing game. They're going to try to pass a little more and see if that works this year. But I do think there's a big question mark in, is Nick Sirianni and his staff, Shane Steichen, Kevin Petullo, are these guys schemers, or do they just kind of have their West Coast offense that just has to be an execute offense and not necessarily an outsmart you offense?
Geoff, I'll leave you with this because I'm looking at your 53. You and Adam both do not have Rieger on it. Does that mean he's getting traded? Because Adam's been pretty steadfast that they will not release him.
Yes. If you'll notice on our 53s, we actually kept 52 with an asterisk saying that if Jalen Reagor is traded, you could see a player come back, and that player would be 53. So I believe that's what's going to wind up happening. Now, do I know it's going to be Jalen Reagor for a player? That may not be. It might wind up being a draft pick, and then therefore one of the guys who's on team now gets to stay. But I just don't see the sense in having Jalen Reagor on the team as the fifth receiver just to return punts at that price. And I know that there are teams that liked Jalen Reagor. I know there are teams that have called and have been calling about Jalen Reagor. A couple of teams lost wide receivers in the last week or two. So I just sense at the end of the day that Howie is going to find a fit there, and someone will be able to – there'll be a deal that they can make that seems fair to both. He's a hard guy, right, to deal because he was a former first-round pick. A lot of teams had him in that late 1, early 2 area. He's obviously not produced. So if you're the Eagles, you don't want to just give him away for a fifth-round pick and say that's his value now because other teams are acquiring him thinking the same thing. We want that first or second rounder that we got. So you can try to build a conditional pick into it, like give me a 5 that can become a 4 or a 4 that become a 3 or something, or you can take a low pick and a player. So there's some optionality there.
All right, Eagles cut-down day tomorrow. Britton Covey, Devin Allen, John Hightower, Deion Kane, they're all still at practice, so they made it through the day. But tomorrow might be the day the Grim Reaper gets one of them. All right, we'll find out tomorrow's football at 4 right here on the Sports Bash. And check out the Inside the Birds podcast for their 53-man roster predictions and thoughts on this Eagles cut-down day coming up tomorrow. Thank you, Moshe.
You got it.